So last Friday, I got an email from McFarlane saying that they are releasing a new Santa Batman. And if you see my channel, then you know that I love Batman. And while this one is pretty out there, I decided to go ahead and order it. And so here we are, like 3 days later, we're Monday, and I got them in the mail already, very, very fast. So I think they're still available to buy right now as of this recording. But as we get closer to Christmas time, then we'll see. So if you're interested, you should probably go ahead and pick this up. Otherwise, we're gonna go to take a look at the packaging. We're gonna take a look at the figures, obviously, and anything else, because I think these are all new designs. I couldn't find any comic related appearances of this particular Batman. So stick around and we're gonna get right into it. So here we have the two Batman, but real quick, I wanna take a look at the brown box that they both came in. And so the reason why I want to take a look at this is because this is our red packaging and our blue packaging. And what we see is the item number is 17077 and 17087. Now, I don't know how the numbering is decided, but what I was thinking is that it's possible that they decided to do a red one, and then a little bit later they decided to do a blue one, which is why we have a 77 and an 87. However, this could also just be how their numbering works. I don't know, but if you know, then let me know in the comments. Anyway, the packaging style for these are actually really different from our regular DC Multiverse line, right? Because as we know, they're all just kind of regular cardboard packaging, not this like blister packaging from kind of, long ways back, but that's what we're getting with this. So it leads me to believe that McFarlane is kind of intending this to just be a nice display piece, because even up top here, you can see how it has the DC logo. Otherwise, they do appear obviously exactly the same. And taking a look at the back, we can see that it looks just like the art on the front. So nothing real special there. No particular description. Our bottom sides are pretty typical as well. The one interesting thing that I will point out though is that, so this Batman is blue and white, and so our logo kind of reflects that just a bit. But this Batman is red and white, and the logo is red and green. So that makes sense from a Christmassy standpoint, but just something interesting to note. Now let's get these guys opened up. And here he is in all of his Christmassy Santa bat glory. So let's take a look at everything that came inside. And this is a regular stand that come in all of the McFarlane DC Multiverse toys. We also get this nice stand, which is for the background. And so it comes in two pieces, and it just pegs into the other piece like that. And then you can see it's got a slot for the comic cover. And the comic cover itself, as you saw, isn't anything special in terms of anything on there identifying anything. It's not a 1 out of X number of ones that they made or anything like that. It's not a real comic book, but it's a really cool looking piece. I like it. It's designed to look like it's a comic book. So I think that makes for a really nice background. And I'm just gonna slot this guy in, and that doesn't hold like firmly. So that way it doesn't mess up the bottoms, which is nice. So just keep that in mind in case you want to put that in. Our one accessory is this Santa bag with gifts. It's one big honkin' chunk of plastic. There's really not a lot to say about this. This doesn't come out at all. There's no handle, so I don't know how Batman would even like hold on to it as a sack. It's really just meant to sit on the ground. But this is what you're here for, and here is Bat Santa, or I like to think of it as Santa that got in shape and is wearing a Batman mask instead of Bruce Wayne as Santa. But do what you want. In any case, this looks like a whole new design from McFarlane. I don't think I've ever seen this in the comic books, nor have I seen any images online. If I'm wrong, then please let me know in the comments. But otherwise, starting at the boots, even the boots, those could possibly be taken from another Batman, but I think McFarlane has a tendency to basically just make a new sculpt with each figure, barring it being like a civilian head of the same costume. But that looks good. We have pretty standard articulation, at least in terms of the McFarlane line, with our joints. We get the tilt, we got the toe, we have double jointed knees. But what we want to know is if our Santa coat impacts articulation. So the Santa coat itself, it looks good, it feels good, it's got a nice texture to it. It's a lot like the capes from a lot of the other Batman figures. And so obviously, this should be entirely fine for articulation, but if we're trying to do something back, then actually that works really well. Thanks to having the split in the back, he can articulate just fine with his legs, it looks like. So let's try coming out, and that holds just fine too. So our cape coat doesn't get in the way of articulating our legs. Now, unfortunately, I could not find a way to remove the belt in any kind of way. So if you do want to remove it, it looks like you might have to cut it off. Again, if that's something that you're familiar with and I'm not, then let me know in the comments. And then, of course, we have our bat symbol. And this, it kind of looks like the Dark Knight movie one. It kind of looks like a couple of different ones, but this looks like just a whole different bat design to me, and it looks really good. It looks great in that gold. Gauntlets, same thing. They look really neat. I like that it's more of like forearm like armor as opposed to like a full gauntlet, and you know, you can see that it is supposed to be strapped in. I think it would have been nice had the straps been painted maybe like a brown to make it look like it was leather straps or something like that, but it makes sense too at the same time that it's just fully red. And then looking at the cuff, it's kind of interesting because this is more of a Santa design than it is a Batman design, with the cuff kind of coming around the hands. And speaking of our hands, we do have kind of a standard Batman gloved hand with a bit of knuckle armor on there. Speaking of armor, we do have these nice shoulder pads, which do come up, and let's see how they perform with articulation. And again, as far as articulation goes, most of this is pretty standard stuff, but at our wrist, it looks like that cuff does not get in the way of spinning our wrist around. Although if for any reason you would want to move your hand to be past that, then obviously the cuff would get in the way. Otherwise, moving up like that and moving up like that, the shoulder armor does not get in the way of that. So that's awesome. All the way around. Now, the one place that we are going to have some limited articulation is going to be our waist, because the coat really is one long piece. So there's only so much waist articulation he's going to have compared to a typical McFarlane, but we can still twist it a decent amount. So you can see I can get his hip kind of showing on the side, but let's see here. I can get him into an almost seated position. Although to be fair, I would say a lot of McFarlanes can't really get very far anyway. But I think this is even more limited than that. Now, if you didn't notice, there is a bat design on his ab area. That is completely hilarious to me. And now let's take a look at that head. Here is our Bat Santa head. Unlike other McFarlane heads where the hair appears to be part of the mold, this beard does appear to be a separate piece that was glued on or fused onto the face, as well as the cap, looking like it was probably a separate piece. That's really neat. And the cap looks really good. There's a lot of detail that you can see. It looks really furry, the way you would expect a Santa cap to look like. We've got the ball on the back. That's also a furry look. It's a good looking Batman. It's a little surprising that McFarlane's gonna go all of the way out of his way to make a Santa Batman and not have a smiling head, at least as an option. But as we know, McFarlane doesn't really make alt heads unless it's a whole different release. There's our Santa Batman with his comic book background in his bag. I kind of wish that there were some accessories. I mean, he doesn't even have fists. He actually has open hands to be gripping something. So it seems like it should have come with something. Although I guess the idea is that I guess he's holding onto the reins of these reindeer bat things. I don't know. I think a batarang would have been nice to have, or even just some kind of like stick to beat naughty villains, right? I don't know. But this is what we're getting. I didn't quite want to unpack our blue Batman because they are the same exact mold. There are no differences whatsoever. It's really just the paint jobs that are different. And so in place of our gold, we have silver, and that's included in both the armor as well as our presents over here in our sack. And otherwise, you know, blue for red, and all the black remains the same. Really, it comes down to what your color preference is, although typically Santa Claus appears as wearing a red coat, so this might be the one that most people are going to want to get. I was able to purchase these as a 2-pack set, saving I think like $5 because each one individually is 30 and the 2-pack was 50. And now for a couple of comparisons. So here's how Santa Batman stacks up against Nightfall Batman. Nightfall Batman is probably my favorite Batman from the McFarlane line so far. I do have a whole review on that guy on my channel already. And here he is next to one of the many Jokers that we have in the McFarlane line. You can see that he is pretty standard scaling. So if you're mostly a McFarlane collector, then he's gonna look just fine in your collection. Here he is next to Golden Age Batman from Mezco. Obviously the scaling is very, very different, so it's not gonna look quite right together like that. And here he is next to our movie Shazam, and I'm only using this one because the color scheme actually matches pretty perfectly and they look really good together. So if you're making a Christmas display, then consider throwing movie Shazam in there. I really like the figure, and I was trying to get the Mythic Legends Father Christmas as another figure to compare against them, since it's basically Santa Claus next to this one. But this one came way too fast, so I was unable to do that in time. But if you do want to see that, then let me know in the comments below. And otherwise, if you like Batman like I do, then check out my Batman playlist right up here.